Hi, and welcome to another TurboCamaro.ca video production. You can see here I have the Chevy Inline 6 250. It's ready to be cleaned and painted. I'm going to be using a VHT rattle can spray paint on this, but there's some steps to go through first. You can see here that there's a surface rust already starting to build on it due to the location of the machine shop and the fact that I live on a small island. I cannot get to the machine shop quick enough, so it unfortunately had a little bit of time to rust up, but that's okay. It'll leave us with some work to do to prep it, but you'll get to see it all. So this is going to be I guess, first video in a series of videos related to getting this engine assembled. I want to go through this sort of step by step. By no means am I a master mechanic or a master painter or any master of pretty much anything, but I'm going to go through this with you, and if you have any tips or any questions or any suggestions or anything like that, please let me know, as I'm not afraid of any kind of feedback if you think that this could be done better than it is. That being said, I got this table here, if you want to call it that, but it's got my supplies on it for now. We got some wire brushes, a bigger wire brush, some sandpaper for small crevices, some gloves because you don't want your oils of your skin on the block when you're trying to clean it, and of course some toothbrushes, X-Acto knife, some tapes for when I want to mask it off, and I don't have an air-powered spray gun or anything like that, so I'm going to be using this fancy-dancy Rust-Oleum spray paint can trigger gun thing. It'll let me have a controlled spray for a good sweeping motion for when this gets done. It's actually, I've used it before. It's a pretty nice product as far as doing simple objects like this for paint. This is going to be more of a prep and mask job than it is a paint job. Obviously, it wanted to turn out good, but it's not as likely going to be an issue as just making sure that the prep is done properly. So I'm going to go ahead and put a scratch into this block and try to cut down on this rust a little bit, and we'll go from there. Alright, so all the rust is scratched off here. You can see there, it looks like there's still some rust left in some of the crevices, but I think it just needs to be cleaned out. So we'll have to take a look as we go here. But you can go ahead and bring out your cleaning product now. You can do Dawn dish soap, denatured alcohol, any kind of purple or super clean degreaser. In this case, I'm going to use mineral spirits. It's a great pre-paint product that worked well on the car, so it'll work well on this. I highly recommend you don't use a cloth like this. They work great for removing general dirt on things, but maybe your hands, but not the greatest for the actual materials of the block because they leave so many fibers behind. You want to use something lint-free, like a lint-free cloth. If you have available, you can use coffee filters. They're pretty cheap, they're disposable, and they leave zero material behind, so they're great for this sort of application. Just when cleaning, just make sure you're generous with the cleaner. You want to go ahead and just cake the whole thing, wipe it all off. When you're done, you really shouldn't see anything left on the actual coffee filter or the cloth, because if it's clean, it won't leave any dirt behind. So obviously there's going to be, you could stay here forever and do that unless you're going to dip it, the whole block, in something. You're never going to probably get it perfect, but do the best you absolutely can. The better job you do with this entire process, the better the outcome is going to be. So let's go ahead and clean it and continue from there. So as the cleaning's done, you can start the masking process. Let it be known this is probably 50 to 80% of the actual work. Not much on this side of the block, but you can see here that I've gone and done the whole area where the head connects, as well as the side covers for the lifters and push rods, as well as the distributor hole, fuel pump, and oil filter hole. And now I've got the water pump and the timing cover over here. I just sort of started them to show you how I'm doing it. There may be a better way, but this is how I've done it before. I basically just tape off the whole area. It's going to need tape for the most part anyway, and then tape the gaskets if you have them. I have the whole kit of gaskets over here for the whole block, and just tape it to this where it goes. You can sort of find the bowl holes pretty easily, line it up nicely, tape it, and then just use the X-Acto knife to go around it, and then you can just sort of peel off the gasket, and you'll be left with the area sort of just like that, or like these here. So just go ahead and do that to all the areas. You're going to probably want to do the bolt holes as well. You can see them in here, bolt holes all over the place. This is a good time to use gloves because you don't want to smear all your cleaning with skin oils and stuff. I mean, you can always give it a quick wipe down before you're done, but keep in mind you've got to wait for it to be dry before you can paint. So just go ahead, do all the masking, take your sweet time. This does take time. Like I said, if you've spent an hour cleaning it, you're probably going to spend an hour or even an hour and a half or maybe more just doing this masking. And the better job you do, of course, the better it's going to look. It'll look nice when you go ahead and and finish painting and peel it all off, and you see all these clean lines and stuff. So go ahead and finish this up, and we'll everything all masked off. You should be ready for paint now. I've just gone ahead and used the coffee filter to plug some of the holes, and I made sure there's some plastic on the bottom so that they couldn't get up into the crankshaft area. Rim and seal was taped off. I actually just squished up the roll and managed to get that all covered up. Just don't want any of those surfaces to be covered with paint, because it'll just create more work for you later having to remove it. So once you're all good to go, you're confident you've got no handprints or grease marks or anything exposed that shouldn't be exposed, you can paint. This is getting done with the VHT Metallic Black Pearl paint. It's a great paint, actually. I've used it for most of the other body parts. Issue with it, I found, is that it sprays fairly thin. In other words, it takes multiple coats, 3 to 4 coats to get full coverage. And for something like this, where you're having to do a large area, that's not necessarily the best thing. It is a heat paint up to 650 Fahrenheit, 343 Celsius, which is perfect for a block. That being said, it's the coverage is the problem. You might be better off finding yourself a black or dark colored primer first that has better coverage, and then spraying the paint on after. This is a great paint. It's virtually impossible to get off once it's on, unless you take a grinder to it or a wire wheel or something like that. So this is perfect. But that being said, I'm probably gonna have to use 2 full cans to make it go when I use 2 full cans to do the entire engine bay. So that being said, let's get started. Just between coats 2 and 3 here, and I thought I'd pause for a moment and just note something here. If you've got your engine on a stand like this, it's great because you can rotate it. That being said, it's difficult to get into the crevice here at the back of the block, so you kind of have to sort of Mickey Mouse your way into the crevices. It really doesn't get seen anyway, so for this project I'm not overly concerned, but of course I do want to try to get paint on every part if I can. Also, flipping the block upside down allows you to get access to sort of the undersides of some of the snouts for the block bolts and things like that. So just keep in mind, if you can flip it over, you get access to some things that you probably wouldn't have done a great job on if you couldn't have. You can even see here, some of these things are sort of tucked in there. The original cast iron is kind of showing through just because it's I wasn't able to get it with a normal direct spray. One of the thing is that this is the second coat now on. It's still drying between coats, and it's actually coating the block very well. I mentioned that it went on very thin. It seems that perhaps painting in some of the other parts, like maybe the aluminum parts, it goes on and seemingly is a little bit thinner, but on the cast iron block, it's 2 coats, and where I've been able to spray, I would say has achieved more or less full coverage. 3rd coat, like it says on the can, is probably the way to go, but I'll probably do another coat to cover up some of these missed spots here, and then I'll do a 4th and final coat to get the full coverage on everything. So that's it. That was 4 coats total. The last coat I did it upright, just how I did the first 2 coats, and I did it pretty thick, so I kind of caked it on. Overall, I think it turned out pretty good. You can see it kind of in the sunlight here. It is a metallic finish. Doesn't really show up all that well on camera, but in person it kind of looks like there's like fine glitter particles throughout the entire paint job. You can see here I removed some of the masking already. It's probably could do a little bit of a cleanup on this, but for the most part it actually masked off pretty good. Turned out great. None of this will be visible because the gaskets will go there, but then the part will actually be on top of the gasket, and it'll extend past the paint a little bit, so it really makes no difference. But you can see here, just attention to detail by going around the gaskets with the X-Acto knife does make a big difference on how it'll turn out. You can see here, especially on this, most of this face is actually covered by parts which are already painted, but you can see here even between where the gaskets go, there is some possibly visible area that you wouldn't necessarily have painted if you just decided to ignore this entire face here. This side is pretty much just all one piece. You might be able to get a glimpse here of some kind of a sparkle. It's very fine. It's not it's not too girly or anything like that, but it's definitely looks pretty good. I actually have this rebuild gold plate here, bronze plate or whatever, probably brass I guess, for a remanufactured serial number out of the US somewhere, but I haven't been able to figure out exactly where that relates to. But overall, you can get a bit of a glimpse of the sparkle there. I caked it on pretty good there. Probably could have done some more paint in this area, but with the stand here it makes it pretty tough. So last bit I want to go over real quick here is just the removal of the masking. This paint, it dries to the touch in an hour, and it can be handled in 3 hours, and then after recoating has to occur after 7 days, within an hour or after 7 days. So for this paint, to remove the tape, it's best to do it around the hour mark when it's dry to the touch, but not to the point where it's dry to handle. It's kind of confusing for a lot of different paints, and really you kind of got to look into it a bit. But for enamels and lacquers, like these one-stage paints like this, you want to go ahead and remove it within an hour or so, give or take. But the hour is basically the touch time. So what you want to do, the best way, and this is the way I like to do it, is to go into the middle of the area that you're removing and peel it away from the middle toward the painted portion. So for instance, we're going towards the back of the block right now because that's the closest painted bit, and then discard that. And I've got some little pieces here, but you want to kind of go on a 45-degree angle towards the painted area. See what I'm doing here? Towards it. About a 45-degree angle or so. It's, the best you can. You can see here I'm moving, goes all the way across. And it'll come off at about a 45 at that edge. And then same thing applies for the rest of it. You can try starting at one end if you want, and then just try to pull it off so that you're coming off away towards the paint. And that'll prevent chipping, that'll prevent any kind of cracking or the paint getting taken away by the tape. If you leave it on too long, it will possibly chip or crack the paint as you're peeling it off. If you take it off too soon, you'll end up with smearing and possibly some contamination from the glue pulling away and things like that. So either way, that's the general idea. I'm going to finish this up here, and we'll put the results on turbocamaro.ca. Thank you very much for watching, and be sure to subscribe on YouTube if you're interested. I also have a pretty active Twitter account if you're interested in that. Thank you for watching.